The pursuit of a practical means to travel between stars was sadly not as exciting or as noble as our writers had long hoped. It was, in fact, a grind to reach the next link of an iterative chain of precursor technologies, each one a wall that must be overcome to reach the next. Behind efficient propulsion lurked inertia. Behind inertia waited the trap of relativity. When a short hop to scout the nearest planet that promised to even vaguely resemble Earth would have seen the pilot return in time to bury their as yet unborn great-grandchildren, precious few volunteers were forthcoming. And of course, behind that temporal snare lurked the speed of light itself. In the end, overcoming that obstacle was not an exercise in romance. There was no rakish defiance of physics, no cheeky thumbing our nose at nature. None of the laws of the universe were broken. They can't be, by definition. But with time, we finally teased out the answers that reduced the travel time between stars from lifetimes to mere years, and from there, months, then weeks. And somewhere along the line, we discovered something that a last holdout few had persisted in insisting could not exist. Proof for the non-existence of any kind of guiding sentience. On our way to heaven, we proved that God had never lived there. In hindsight, it may have been better if we hadn't made that discovery. It would have prevented so many suicides. It might also, had we thought about it thoroughly enough, given us some insight into what we would begin to find. For a while, the last great religious schism of mankind halted our explorations. But eventually, once the wars were over and the last true believers had ceased to be relevant, our voyage resumed. Once a certain technological threshold was passed, Earth-like worlds became simple to locate, and simpler still to scout and evaluate. There were a great many of them. All that is necessary is for a rocky terrestrial world to form in about the right place. Life does the rest of the hard work, sculpting the planet to its own needs. Earth-like worlds are, thus, abundant. And on a subset of them, we began to find the corpses of whole civilizations. None that were exactly like us, but all were very familiar. They lived, they loved, they built, they battled, they worshipped and blasphemed, voted and protested, researched and refuted. We found many non-human species, but no aliens. Nothing truly other. Had they not all been dead, it would have been comforting. Instead, our settlement of the vacant heavens became a depressing excursion through necropolis after necropolis, each bereft of their builders and yet thriving with life. Birds, plants, insects, and countless things that defined any earthly category. We would find artwork every bit as inspired and inspiring as our own, and for each one scintillating masterpiece, many insipid and commercial counterparts. We found their houses of worship, their icons of religious devotion, their tenets and laws. God, it seemed, was an idea that went hand in hand with the rise of an intelligent civilization. Faith was the linchpin, the foundational meme of sentience, and the cities of a million worlds were built as much on theistic spirituality as on concrete and steel. We found living ones too, young species wrapped up in parish matters and pulsing too intimately in time with the rhythm of a rural economy. These beings that had not yet split the atom or sent even a single hardy soul above their atmosphere were given their elbow room, and left a simple message waiting for them in orbit, designed to easily be found and set to draw our attention once activated. None ever were. In one of the lulls between paradigm shifts, when our best engine could happily turn any star in the galaxy into a relatively brief expedition, we reached the edge of our Milky Way and paused, knowing that the distances beyond were for now beyond us. And so we stopped, glanced behind us, and pondered the strange silence of our sister savants. And so we went to them, and so we found more corpse worlds, humming with stupid life, teeming with beautiful things that were a delight every time we found them, but all nesting in the cadaver of what had been the real gem, civilization. The two questions that followed were completely natural ones, and they were both, why? Why did they all die? Why didn't we? For a little while, the journey to Andromeda was put on hold. There was a parish matter to which we first needed to attend. The answer to all whys is a because, and we found our because hunting something not dissimilar to deer, while around him the greatest city his kind had ever built became a cliff-sided hybrid of maze and rainforest. where nature's rule was broken only occasionally by a glint of glass in the sunlight or rusty steel rebar. We asked him our whys and our whats, and of course a polite who. He was, he explained, a coward, unwilling or unable to end his own life. He simply existed, waiting patiently for time to do the job he could not do himself. And then he asked his own question. What keeps you going? I hesitate to say that we replied as follows. The people who answered his question did not knowingly do so on behalf of all humanity. Nobody can answer on behalf of all humanity. To this day, we remain just a little bit too territorial and protective of our own intellectual niche for such an ability to exist in any real or practical way. But nevertheless, we replied, why wouldn't we keep going? He demanded of us, what's the point? We asked, the point? He sat back by the firelight, body language performing the equivalent of hugging his knees, expression miserable. What is the universe for? He asked. One of us frowned, and she asked him, does it have to be for anything? Another of us said, it doesn't need to have a point. And then it happened. At long last, we saw a truth that we had overlooked for so very long. We saw just how alien, how other, how different we really were to them. We saw it in the way he went very quiet and stared at us as if we were insane. I think, he said, that you should leave. And so it went. As we revisited these flourishing worlds of yesteryear, we found them already gone into decay. Whenever we found survivors still holding on and waiting to die, they would ask us the same thing. What's the point? What keeps you going? What is it all for? We said, it doesn't need a point for us to still enjoy life. We said, there's always something more to find, something more to do. We said, it isn't for anything. It just is. On 1,000 worlds, the same arguments. Nothing we do matters. Without the gods, there is no meaning. How can you go on living without a divine plan? We said, if nothing we do matters, then what we do is the only thing that matters. We said, if there is no meaning, then we have the power to bestow it. We said, the absence of a divine plan liberates us. The last reply was finally met with a plea for understanding. How? They asked. How are you liberated by lacking purpose? We told them. Because we're free to make our own purpose. We have the fortune to decide for ourselves rather than to be slaves of a higher power. We make the rules. We decide our fates. We bring meaning and purpose to the universe. We are the gods. All of us. We took them to as many young worlds as we could, where the people still had faith and thus still had hope. We left them with supplies, with literature, and with tools, and made a grand public entrance, as spectacular and godly as our very best special effects technology could produce, to deliver our prophets to them. The gospel they carried was a simple one, and they went knowing that they would most likely end their days burned, hanged, crucified, beheaded, or shot for their unorthodox doctrine, despite stepping down on a light from heaven. But they also knew that it did not matter. All they had to do was plant the seed. All they needed was to start a conversation. We saw that hope was kindled, and it was good, and behind that obstacle lurked the intergalactic vastness. By the time we finished solving that problem, we finally had company. And together, arm in arm, the gods at last began to walk the heavens.